Welcome back to another episode of CONVOS with KEEGS. Episode, what did I just say?
62.
62. Episode 62, day 15?
Day 15.
Day 15. I'm here with my good friend Connor Broad, home from Tahoe. Well, he's from here, but he lives in Tahoe now. Welcome on the show, man.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Of course. Let's dive into Tahoe life a little bit, because we both... You have lived there longer than I have, but our experiences have been way different. And we were kind of just talking off camera about South Lake. So how much time have you spent in South Lake?
Well, I moved out to
Bring your mic up just a little bit.
Incline Village in the start of COVID, actually, which that was an experience in itself to move to. I'd never been there.
Yeah.
Just hooked the tiny home up and drove out there. We spent a couple weeks getting there and showed up in a town that was completely shut down.
Yeah.
And that was interesting to say the least. You're trying to meet new people and make connections, and there's nothing going on. Everyone's in their house. So it took a while to cultivate and find. I had friends there. My cousin lives there, and so I had connections and friend groups to hang out with, but it was way harder than I thought it was going to be, and just with everything going on with COVID. But Incline Village is in North Lake, so complete opposite of where you were living.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would say it's two different worlds. If you're in North Lake, it is definitely a bit more local vibe. Still super touristy, but not the commercial aspect as much. There's no big buildings or nothing's built up in Incline. It's all much more low key, and a lot of second homeowners, and there's more, I would say. I mean, the hiking and exploration of doing different activities is probably about the same, but I like it in North Lake better. I've probably, in 3 years, I've been down to South Lake less than 10 times.
Really? Holy shit.
And the time we met up with you was the first time I went down there in several months.
Damn. So I actually, ironically, I moved to Tahoe literally right before COVID started, because I went there right after me and Nolan got home from Asia. I went straight from Australia right to there because I was I'm running out of money. We were supposed to go to New Zealand and Hawaii after, but I had no fucking money. So I found a job on Workaway at a hostel, at Mellow Mountain Hostel. Shout out to them. And I get there, get a job at Heavenly. 3 weeks later, everything shut down. And I was living at a hostel with fucking 13 other people.
Looking for a job.
Bro,
we call it poverty with a view. Yeah.
Dude, honestly, it was wild, man. And especially so you've been to South Lake, the obviously the commercial aspect and the tourism, that's pretty much what runs the whole town. So when there was no one there, it felt like a ghost town. It was weird. And I remember I was there for probably 2.5 months. And for the first 3 weeks was the only time that I got to see the tourist kind of vibe of it. And then everything shut down. There was no people. So it was just me and 13 other people living at this hostel. I had so there's 2 different jobs. You could be a cleaner or front desk. And the cleaners were living in a room, 2 bunk beds in one tiny room. So there was
just compact. Yeah,
dude.
Sardines down there. Yeah.
Bro. But if you were a front desk person, you got to go into a room with just one other roommate and a queen size bed. And
you share the bed or what?
No.
One split beds?
No. But the roommate that I did have, so I started as a cleaner. So I was in the bunk bed room, got switched over to front desk, got the queen size bed with a roommate, and then my roommate her parents got scared of COVID. She was like fresh out of high school, so I don't know. Her parents were a little nervous, so she went home, and then I had this whole room to myself for like 2 months. But yeah,
golden freebie gift right there,
dude, for real. It was like we were kind of talking about before. South Lake is just a party scene, and we can both relate, like it's just not sustainable, you know?
Yeah.
And that's
party. It's all around Tahoe. It's just everyone's going there to mountain lifestyle, party, anything you want to get, you can find, and like you can't get caught up in that.
Yeah.
You end up being broke and acting like an idiot. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, dude, the amount of fucking money that goes into partying there. Like when I moved back there after I left the hostel, I wasn't drinking at the time, but I was working at a restaurant, and all of my friends would party, but I would still hang out with them because I would smoke weed, and my restaurant was like the hub for people to meet up after and then go to the casinos.
Is this 10 Crows?
Yeah, shout out 10 Crows.
It's 10 Crows, lovely spot.
It is, dude. But man, those motherfuckers can drink. And like, it was just it was crazy, man. And I was only 20, so I was just watching all of my friends just party every fucking day. And I was stoned pretty much the whole time. So it's like,
and it's like there's no end until you draw a hard line in the sand.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you remember when the restrictions would get lifted and then they would come back and get lifted? What was that like in North Lake? Like, did you guys feel the effects of COVID as much, since it's still a tourist town, but it wasn't as much as South Lake?
Yeah, for me, I'd never experienced, I showed up there like a few days after the whole country basically shut down. We were in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Yeah.
And we were like doing a cross-country ski road trip and like trying to hit as many resorts as we could. And so we had just spent a week in Steamboat, parked the tiny home at the rodeo, actually.
Damn.
Steamboat for free, rodeo parking lot. And we were just skiing and doing mountain life there for like 5 days, and then left, and on our way to Salt Lake, no one's been looking at the news. We're all checked out. And our parents I went out with my two best friends and my cousin, just great convoy out, and our parents are like calling us, and they're like, did you hear about this COVID thing? And we're like, no. We pull into this KOA in Salt Lake at like 2 a.m., wake up the next morning, the whole place was completely booked out, full.
Jesus.
We like stayed up, we're partying late, woke up at like maybe 10 or 11. The only ones there, the tiny homes, the only campers set up in there. And there's one guy, this wacko guy's like coming over, he's like got overalls on, and like he's like trying to party, and he's like, oh, fuck all this COVID stuff. And we're like, what is COVID?
Yeah.
They locked all the bathrooms, and like there was no facilities. And at this point in time, I left. The tiny home was like the bathroom. I had all the plumbing and like hard stuff in, but the shower wasn't functional, and we were just like completely winging it. Yeah. So we were like, all right. We kind of were relying on the KOA for like a shower after riding the last few days, and we just completely bailed on all the resorts were closed that we had passes for. So like the trip ended there, and we drove through the Salt Flats and hung out there for a bit that afternoon, and then got to Tahoe, and the Rookies bar was open actually, and like that was the first place I went in Incline Village. We just pulled in, parked in the parking lot, and everyone was like, it was like going to be the last night. They were like shutting down after that night.
Yeah.
And that was like a wild time. That place is comparable to Rookies here. Same bar. It's literally called Rookie Sports Bar and Grill. So I just leave one town, drive to the other side of the country, and end up at Rookies again.
Damn,
That was
dude.
a trip and a half. Yeah.
That's wild.
And then we didn't do, like, everything was closed. Like, the whole town was shut down for weeks, dude. And I ended up being in the trades, got a painting job with a buddy, and that was my first job. I did that for like a month because his boss was just like looking for employees. He had all this work, and like no one wanted to work in COVID, and
Yeah.
I wanted to work. I was pretty much broke getting there. We blew up some tires on the tiny home trailer going out, so I like ended up buying three spare tires in Cleveland, Ohio. As far as we made it the first night, we only drove 3 hours, ran over a bungee cord, and it just shredded the whole tire. I thought I was going to dump the tiny home on 90, and it was like a complete blizzard snowstorm when we left. All our parents are like, it's not the time to go, and we were like, fuck yeah, it's the time to go. Like, I've been working on this thing for 2 years. Like, we're rolling out. We left at like 6 or 7 p.m. at night.
Jesus.
Only
dude.
made it to outside of Cleveland. We're stuck there for like a day and a half trying to find. You got to find like really high rated tires, or like load E 10-ply steel tires to support the weight.
Yeah.
And like we couldn't find them. We had to order them, and like some guy got them expedited. And
holy shit.
so, anyways, that was a kind of a side avenue. But got there and had no money. It was just, we actually got hooked up through a friend connection, and within 2 days of being, I parked the tiny home at the college there in Northlake.
Yeah.
And they weren't too happy about that because I just left it in their parking lot for a few days, and then just started networking and like talking with friends there. And there was a young couple who had just bought a house, and they didn't want to move into it because of COVID.
Yeah.
So they were like, go bring your tiny home, park it in our driveway, and live there. And like they gave us full access to this like
Damn.
just baller house, like decks on every level, like the whole 4th floor. In Tahoe, all the layouts are reversed, so like usually you walk in on the like middle level because everything's on a steep slope. So the middle level is like kitchen, living area, usually bedrooms downstairs, and like then a master upstairs. And we hadn't even met. I didn't even meet this couple. We just talked to them on the phone, and they're like, if you're a friend of Hunter's, then
holy
you
shit.
love that dude and you're set. And I stayed there on Christina Drive for a few weeks. They let us just live there. Yeah.
Holy shit, man.
And then I ended up renting a room with some buddies. That's what you do out there. Like, rent's expensive. If you're lucky enough, you get a house and have a room and live with like 5 people and 4 dogs.
Dude, for real.
And that's how it goes.
That's
wild, what I was doing basically the whole time. I just got my own spot now after 3 years. You got to be house hunting. Yeah.
That's literally like, you nailed it, man. I mean, that is the life of Tahoe. You got to get lucky. Like, I lived there for about a year and a half. Everyone I talked to, it was the same situation. You have a ton of roommates, ton of dogs. You're always looking for when the new spot, because you don't know if you're going to get kicked out of your spot. Like, it's just constant trying to find somewhere to fucking live.
Yeah, and you like fall in love with the lifestyle. And I feel like Tahoe attracts. I found my people there. Like, everyone that you would meet is like going there to embrace the mountain lifestyle. And it's sort of like EA is a complete bubble and like a privileged town, and living in Incline, it is similar and different in ways. It's like EA mountain lifestyle, so like totally different vibe and energy, but the privilege aspect is very heavy. Like, it's a wealthy community, and after being there, I missed it. Didn't have the community of EA, and it was just too many rich people that like you don't have those daily interactions of like genuine care and like just like going to the gas station and like exchanging. I mean, most of the locals work at those types of jobs, so like you do have good exchanges, but it was different. And I've just been living in Truckee for a month now, and the community, totally different vibe. It's much more my pace, working class, and like people that are there to stay. Incline Village is kind of like people just coming and going.
Yeah, totally. Southlake is, I would say Southlake's a mix of both. Southlake definitely has their like locals, and it's all the restaurant workers, you know. And I didn't know too many people in the trades in Southlake. I knew a few, but not many. But the worst part about Southlake is just the fucking tourism, man. And these people just don't. It's like the tourists come to Tahoe and they just forget how to live life.
Yeah, there's like a lack of respect for the nature aspect. Like after the summers, the trails are just littered with garbage, and like out there you don't even throw a cigarette butt or anything out the window. Yeah. You'll start a forest fire. Mm-hmm. And I became super aware. Like that was the first fire summer I experienced was like, that was humbling, because growing up here, you don't ever think of that stuff. And then like next thing you know, the AQI is like over 300, and you literally are waking up coughing at night. Yeah. And like you just shut the whole house up, and it is like dark and apocalyptic for like 3 or 4, as long. There's been times where it's lasted weeks. Yeah. And a lot of times stuff shuts down too. Like you got to be prepared for shutdowns. Like when the fires came, like all the people working in the hospitality industry, like were places where they weren't closed down permanently like COVID, but they weren't open as much. So like everyone's like, you gotta try and save money. I'm not the best at saving money, but you gotta try and look like a little bit down the road. Yeah. So like when things do happen, you're like, all right, like I'm somewhat set up here. You know?
Yeah. I remember it wasn't this past summer, but the last summer when I left Tahoe, it was because of the wildfires, and it was the Caldor fire and the Dixie fire, I want to say. Yeah. Did you have to evacuate as well?
No. So actually the Caldor fire, I was living on the tiny home. Well, in the tiny home on a property on the Truckee River. Gotcha. And the fire came, and there was literally like ash just falling out of the sky for days, like no visibility. Yeah. And I left. I hooked the tiny home up. I was working for a guy doing flips on houses, and he hired me to run his crew there, and did that most of the summer. The Caldor was like right at the end. The Caldor was in Southlake, right? Yeah, we had to evacuate. Yeah, so I just hooked up the tiny home and drove down to a little place called Sonora, which is about 4 hours south. Dude, I've been there. My family lives there. Blue-collar rancher town, cowboy town. It's built up. Like it's like Orchard Park, and then you drive just out of town, and it's just all ranchers and cattle. Yep. And I got on a framing crew there and was living on the tiny on a 100-acre ranch. So I went from living on the Truckee River, which was amazing. That until I retire, I'll never have a better living situation than that. Just living in my tiny home. We had it parked on a tennis court on like a 30-acre property on the opposite side of the river. Private bridge that was actually falling apart. The bridge fell down this summer, and we took a 11,500-pound tiny home over it, chainsawed a beam that was laying on it while we had the tiny home on the bridge over the Truckee. Holy shit. That was a lucky day. I could have lost the whole setup right there, and that would have been no bueno for sure. Dude, that was crazy. We were like, shit. I was like driving down out the Truckee River this summer and saw the bridge was just like completely collapsed in. And
that's fucking crazy. It was a rowdy
adventure, yeah.
Let's kind of get into, before we started, you said that van life is a myth. So let's get into that.
crack it open, let the people know how it really is. I would say I have a pretty good taste and idea of it after designing and building the tiny home, which was like a huge dream of mine. And so I lived in the tiny, and the cons of that were you need a big expensive diesel truck that needs a lot of maintenance.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't regret any of it, but traveling across country with that, just white knuckle driving, like I had like good insurance policy on it all, but like at one point we were driving down the highway. I would like max speed do that thing at like 75. Most of the time we drive like right around 60. It was nice and easy, towed well. And this lady pulls up next to us. We're like doing 60 or so, just cruising, and she's freaking out, like waving her hands in the window, like yelling at us. We're like in the truck, just like highway zoning out, like just trying to make miles.
Yeah.
And like look over and we're like, this lady's freaking out. Like, what's she trying to tell us? The back doors of the tiny home are wide open. Shit's just falling out of the highway. The lock, the deadbolt lock like came undone. So the doors are wide open. I got my generator back there. It was luckily bolted down, but we lost like a couple traffic cones and some electrical cords and like just stopped it. I just like pulled right over on the side of the highway.
Holy
like ran out, picked
shit.
everything up, threw some wood shims in the door and just kept going. That was like a problem for the next morning. I put some better locks on it after that. And
there's some wood shims on it.
Yeah, we just jammed wood shims, like, and it was like folding doors that met in the center, so we just jammed a bunch of shims in there and kept going. But you got to be super prepared with the tiny for like all your truck. You got to have fluids, everything you need for your truck.
Yeah.
Learned the hard way. I only had one spare tire. We needed more than that, and that's what we were talking about earlier. And but then I bought an ambulance last winter and converted that. Shout out to Sam Helm. He let me use his shop. I got a sick setup going there.
Dang.
And that was a fun time. I was just like going up every day to Sammy's house and working on. I gutted the whole thing there, stripped all the electrical out of the ambulance, and I love that lifestyle, but not to live full time. Once you start living full time, it's like, all right, like every 3 days you get somewhere super sick and scenic, and it's like the reels you see online of like people waking up and they're like got just a pimped out interior van or tiny home or like whatever small living it is.
Yeah.
And that's not how it is all the time. And like it's cheaper than, it depends on where you're paying rent, but when I was living in the ambulance, I had a basic low-key build out. It was nothing like the tiny. I didn't have any hard plumbing. I just had a 5-gallon water jug and a pull-out bed and a Coleman cooktop stove. And like I love that. Like it like reminded me of like getting back down to the basics and like simplicity and just like living free. But diesel is a ton of money. I get like 8 MPG in the ambulance.
Shit.
So if you can do that math, like just driving that thing out there was a chunk of change. And
the tank's got to be massive, right?
it's a dude. I got 2 separate tanks. They're 20 gallons each, and
holy shit!
My rear tank was converted to run diesel to the generator and stuff. That's how I bought it. And I haven't spent the money to convert it back, so I'm just like rolling on 20. Like,
damn.
Drive 2 hours and then fill up, drive another 2 hours, and like let the dogs out. It's a process, and like everything you see of van life is true to an extent, but like a slim percentage of it is like that all the time.
Yeah.
And like then when I was living in the ambulance and just like camping out and sleeping wherever around Tahoe, which was super sick. Woke up at like some beautiful spots, but when you're trying to be professional and get to work on time, and like you then have your 2 dogs living in there with you, it gets a little little tiresome. It's a privileged thing to say, to been able to experience that and learn it, but for me, I was like, I need a place to live and, like, come home after working a hard day, take a real shower. And, like, I also found I was always, like, worried about where I'd park at night. I'd be, like, super specific.
Yeah.
Because, like, you can really park anywhere, but you'll get ticketed. Like, I got a huge yellow oversized ambulance. Like, I got pulled over the first day I drove into Tahoe, had, like, in transit plates, and they were just like, they wanted to search the whole thing. They thought I was smuggling drugs from the East Coast.
Holy
shit! I was like, dude, everyone goes the other way. Like, comes from the West Coast or anything going back. And,
yeah.
He was a really, really cool cop, and he didn't end up searching everything. And I, like, just literally was honest with him, told him what I was doing, and like, had my 2 dogs in there, and, like, good distraction. Dogs in the car when you get pulled over are a good distraction.
Yeah.
And but I got sick of, like, trying to find it. Like, if I was gonna park somewhere, I wanted to, like, be at the scenic spot.
Yeah.
And I would, like, Prosser Reservoir, I, like, lived and camped out there in the ambulance a bunch, and, like, would wake up and go to work and then drive back out there at the end of the day, like, after hanging out. It's best to, like, park for the night once the sun's down, you know?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to stay where you're sleeping. Like, if you find a good spot, like, you want to hit that and then leave early in the morning, and, like, no one gives you a hard time. But, like, I was never down to just be, like, parking in town on the side of the road.
Yeah.
And after a little bit of time, I was like, I'm sick of, like, driving to the good spots. And, like, I guess I didn't have to do that, but that was just my choice. And it's a lot of work. Like, I mean, it's less work than taking care of a house or an apartment, but, like, you got to be on top of your shit. Like, you got to have, like, your little green Coleman propane. Like, I'd run out of those. I'm like, fuck, I'm trying to cook dinner. And then, like, now I'm driving back into town.
Yeah,
you got to, like, just, like, kind of plan your lifestyle ahead of time a bit more, like, make sure you have water and stuff like that. And then I was just living out of a Walmart cooler for my fridge, and like, would run out of ice, and then, like, oh, the chicken's bad. This is just been sitting in here for, like, 3 days, and the ice has been melted for 2. And like, using, dude, Uncle Benny's, like, that 90-minute rice packets, just hook the microwave up to the Jenny. I don't love eating microwave food, but that's, like...
The rice, dude.
When you're living the van life, it's like, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
Food and sustenance. And people I met on the road, too, like, would show me how to cook easy meals. Like, I met these guys down in San Diego. I was just living in the... went down there to visit my brother and just, like, set up and parked at the public beach, and just a bunch of van hippies hanging out, surfing, and, like, they would make that they'd call a loaded ramen. Oh, you just take the ramen, like, Maruchan packets, and then just, like, chop up a bunch of veggies and throw whatever's about to be going bad in the cooler, basically. And get it done. And, like, I was like, this is, like, you got to figure out, you just, like, learn, and, like, everyone's different, but you, like, learn what works for you and, like, what you like to eat. But with all the stomach issues and stuff I have, I try and eat super healthy, and, like, I was not eating healthy living in the ambulance and, like, paying the price for it, like, losing energy. And I think everyone should do it at some point in their life. And it also, like, I bought the ambulance for $6,000, and it's a 95, like, retired. Some contractor had it. He got it from the Cleveland fleet. It was actually a running one in Cleveland for a while. And if you take the time and look and find the right one, and, like, I bought that, and then put, like, upcycled a bunch of material, bought, like, the cheap $20, like, 1/4-inch ply sheets from Lowe's, and just insulated it with foam board and lined the whole thing, and, like, put a couple LED lights up, butcher block counter. Built out a futon frame, and, like, I was hitting the road for, like, with the purchase of the rig and then doing, like, a little minimalist build out. I was, like, $7,500.
Damn.
Traveled across the country.
Holy shit.
That trip, I went with my dad, and we went skiing in Utah. We kind of just hauled ass to Utah because it didn't necessarily